Emotional algebra, where the heart meets the math. What is integral is derivative as you figure out your path. Power plus emotions equals more than you can see. Listening to the wisdom of our host, Dr. E. Emotional Algebra with Dr. E.
Welcome to Emotional Algebra with Dr. E. Emotional Algebra is a podcast that helps listeners to understand the subtle calculations people make every day in their relationships with others. It's a podcast to help us all become better people through understanding the different variables that drive our behaviors. I'm your co-host, Andrew Tavani.
And I'm Dr. E.
Dr. E, I'm looking at your background. It has changed since the last time we recorded an episode, and I'm feeling a vibe of nature, of water. It's almost serenity now, Dr.
Absolutely.
E. Is that what you're going for here? Or is this a sort of an allusion to the guest we have coming today?
Oh, it is. It's a teaser for our upcoming guest. But, this is a view of my pond. Some might recognize who may have watched our special episode on school shootings. I did the opening from my pond patio next to my pond to bring it back out to nature, to bring a little calmness to it and serenity to it. But as you can see, there is no motion. So 2 words to this is green screen. I had updated and upgraded my kit to now have a green screen, which allows us to have shows from all over the world. We can do a frigid episode from the Himalayas. We can do one that's nice sunny day at Giza with the pyramids in the background. But yeah, we're kind of moving up in the world with our production quality, and but mostly today's shot is to really pay homage to our guest, Greg Wittstock.
Greg Wittstock, who is the pond guy. So that's the pond behind you. He is the pond guy. And why don't you say a few words about him before we bring him in?
Well, I have known Greg since college. He's another fraternity brother. So remember, we had Jeff Boothman on, who wrote the book about how to be a cancer patient. Greg is he's a few years younger than Jeff. When I was a senior, Greg was a freshman, and I was actually an RA in the dorms too at Ohio State. So I brought Greg over to the fraternity. And we became fraternity brothers, but he's been like a brother to me just ever since the beginning. I had my decking company, and he was starting to build ponds, even in college. So he would pick my brain here and there. And what he did with his company, Aquascape, is so far beyond anything I think he or I ever could have imagined. But he's done wonderfully with that. He's built ponds all around the world. He's got a great team of experts who are world renowned in what they do now for building ponds. Built a pond for Shaq that actually I went down to the second build for that, and he lives in South Atlanta area. He's built ponds for owners of corporations at corporate headquarters. He built a pond on a huge project that his company built a pond at a mall in Colombia. They're doing a huge project in Africa right now. He started a nonprofit with his wife that does water reclamation, that they use their products to filter the water and make it drinkable and potable in areas where they have water security issues. And potentials for disease. So again, he's done a lot of great things with his life, and not only about, what he's done with his business, but really what he's done with his life and his approach to life. So I think, as you'll see through the discussion, it's about much more than a guy who built ponds. It's a guy who's really built a sustainable life in so many ways and really wants to give back to the world.
It is, and he's a very interesting guy. However, the ponds are amazing, and he's got an incredible YouTube channel everyone should check out. And I'll remind you again at the end of the episode, but wild stuff. The ponds that he builds are truly unbelievable. And you'll see, you can check out the one he did for Shaq, which Shaq is an enormous property, and he made this incredible pond that really enhanced the property. So, but anyway, enough about that. Let's get him in here.
Absolutely.
There he is. Greg, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, and thanks for having me. And Dr. E, thanks for all the nice compliments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Comes from the heart, bro.
So Dr. E, this is an interesting thing here. I was looking at all of Greg's work, amazing work. I should say, first of all, everyone, as soon as you're done listening or watching this podcast, go right to his YouTube channel. You will get lost in it. He does amazing work, and the videos are super cool, very well produced and everything. But Dr. E, for anyone who listens to this podcast regularly, they might not think ponds, emotions. They may not see the connection right away. So tell people where you're going with this episode.
Well, one thing Greg talked about for years, he actually had a magazine called Aquascape Lifestyle. He's always been about lifestyle, and has personally, through his beginning connections to turtles, it was always his emotional connection to nature and to water. And I know from having ponds for 30 years in my first house, he came during the 1996 Olympics and sent some pond building supplies, and he and I built my first pond. Now he had to build a pond day at my house I've been in for 25 years. And that's how he did a lot of his marketing, was these build pond days. But I've had the pond in my yard with built into the deck that goes to the 10-foot waterfall. That, the background behind me is part of my pond on the lower level. So to see the interaction with my fish, I feed them every day. They're my pets. My dog loves to go and just stick her nose in the pond after I feed them and try to eat some of their fish food when she can, as well as just interact with the fish. She has her aquascape lifestyle as too. So I just feel, for people who can't get to nature, I feel very fortunate to live in the nature I do. Having a pond or water feature, small little water garden thing, check out the products Greg has. And it's not about selling the company. It's about helping people connect to things that can bring them a better emotional algebra, to decrease stress, to increase their sense of joy and connection to the world around them, to even, have a place that you can feel, you can hear the running water and get in that meditative space. So, and then again, even some of Greg's journey. Greg's had his emotional journeys that I wanted to talk about too. That, he, as I say, made medicine from suffering in many ways.
So it sounds almost like you're describing a relationship with nature, and obviously relationships come with emotions. Greg, is that kind of it? You got into this at a very young age. Did you feel that a sort of a strong relationship with nature?
Listen, I was a guy that couldn't sit still, and sports was my outlet, and being outside and working in my yard, and of course my pond that I built as a 12-year-old kid for 11 of my pet turtles, when my dad said we were moving from the New Jersey lakefront property that we had to the flat barren cornfields of Wheaton, Illinois, and back in 1982. But he promised me I could bring my 11 pet turtles with me, and I went to the library right when I got into Wheaton, Illinois, and got all the books, because this is, of course, the days before the internet, and they all said to build your pond out of concrete to make it strong. And I put a concrete pond in and dug the hole. My mom was upset about how big it was, and that first pond leak turned green, and even my prize turtles migrated away. But I was undaunted, and it became my classroom, ripping it out and rebuilding it and MacGyvering up my own filter systems every summer for about 7 years. And after 7 years of redoing that, while I had just started college where Dr. E and I met as fraternity brothers at the Ohio State University, the current reigning national champions for football, I ended up starting that business, IO. And because it just took off, because I was just basically talking about what I love to do, and never ever considered this as a career when I started it. It was just a fun way to make money in the summertime, and it just took off, and here we are 34 years later after starting that business and building ponds all over the world and running my business remotely from Park City, Utah. And just my catchphrase on my Greg Wittstock, the Pond Guy YouTube social medias is, I love my job because I truly feel blessed to be able to do what I do.
Now, you Ohio State guys never miss an opportunity to celebrate your big wins. So congrats on being national champions. So Greg, it sounds like you have a love of turtles. Okay. Yes. And I don't know if that's all turtles. I know snapping turtles can be a little bit feisty. They can be a little emotionally, I don't know, Dr. E, how would you describe them?
Yeah, a little
Or
cranky
emotionally
at times.
dangerous, or maybe
Yeah,
physically
yep.
dangerous.
I know I reached into my overflow once. I think I told Greg this, but I reached into my overflow to pull out the leaves and gunk, and I felt a sharp little edge in there, and I'm like, "Holy crap, what was that?" And it was a snapping turtle in my overflow that had I reached into the wrong place, I might be only 9 fingers instead of 10, but, pulled the
So you
thing
like
out of there. It was about that big around. It was not a small turtle either.
so you like the snapping turtles too, Greg?
Listen, I love all turtles. My mascot at Aqualand in St. Charles, Illinois, the water garden capital of the world, is a 103-pound alligator snapping turtle named Woody, famously named after the infamous Ohio State football coach who ran on the field and punched an opposing player after an interception. So Woody is the ambassador to his species at our design studio. And yes, I like turtles.
Wow, 103 pounds. That's an enormous turtle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you started this very young. You didn't actually look at it as a career right from the outset, but you did. Tell about how you actually started making. You made your own pond, but how did you start doing it for other people?
Well, listen, one day the UPS guy was delivering a package, and of course, I was putzing around in my backyard pond. So I heard the doorbell ring. I said, "Come around back." He turned the corner, looked at my pond, and said, "This is beautiful. How did you ever buy a house with a natural spring on it?" I'm like, "No, I built it, man." And he paused and he said, "Could you build me one?" And immediately the idea came into my mind. Yeah, of course I could build you a pond, and never ended up building him a pond, but ended up building 5 ponds in 1991. Made $21,000 as a summer job, which is not a bad gig, certainly more than I made as a lifeguard the year before. And Aquascape was off and running, building water features as a summertime gig. And next year, business really took off and ended up building 12 ponds. And then the Chicago Tribune, which is a newspaper in Chicago, the biggest newspaper, ran a front page story called Yon Golden Pond. Young landscape artist Greg Wittstock relaxes alongside one of his backyard creations, and I sold 81 jobs from that one
Wow.
article. And so all of a sudden, my fun summertime gig became my career, and it's been 34 years, and it's still something that I love to say. I love my job.
Yeah, and you did all of this while going to college. Most college kids, they go to college, they party a little, they do that, but you're here doing a big, construction, creative, constructive type of job during your off season from school and going to school, getting a degree at the same time. It's a tremendous achievement.
Well, it was something that I never even thought of. I was never a student. Actually, I have a lot of probably past trauma from trying to be a student with a mom as an English teacher and a dad as an engineer. They valued education highly, and I valued education highly. But to quote the famous Mark Twain, I never let school interfere with my education.
Well, you certainly did a lot with that, and I think again that's where I talk a lot about there are multiple intelligences, and I think one of the difficulties we have in our world or culture is that we use one IQ score that doesn't capture the whole person. And I think for you, your IQ in understanding and you brought in engineering into what you did, so you didn't necessarily have that typical maybe engineering gift you'd see from somebody who can do all the math and calculus, yet you know how to engineer with nature and what things are given you and to figure things out and to solve problems. So much of education isn't what we get in school. And I know you've talked a lot about, probably because of your experience, that you don't really necessarily feel college is necessary for people because you feel the way where it steers us. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's a default mechanism for most 18-year-old kids, because most 18-year-old kids don't really know what they want to do, and so by default they go to college. And of course, that's one path. But I took that path, unfortunately or fortunately, and you look at everything having a reason. But I was never a student. This was not something that I was wired to do. I was a born entrepreneur. On an ABCD test, I would write E, and argue with the teacher, which does not work in traditional education, certainly works as an entrepreneur. And that's okay. But it took me a long time to come to grips with that because I was fighting a system that was stacked against me, which was, you got to get good grades to have success in life. And really, if I was passionate about something, I could get a good grade in it, but it usually involved using your hands, which is not much in a traditional education. So the reality was that I went to school, but I should have been a Marine, or something else like that I could have done that was much more active. But I learned from that, I grow that. I really talk a lot to kids today about not just, following a prescribed path to think it's success. What really comes with success is your passion, your energy, your attitude, all the EQ things, not necessarily the IQ things. And of course, it's been said a long time ago that, the A students, work for the B students who all work for the C students. So,
Right.
that's just kind of I was a 2.01 GPA guy, but once again, never let my traditional education interfere with my education because I was always reading, always learning, always interacting with people who are more successful with me to this day. I still do that. And I'm a lifelong learner, just not in a traditional setting.
Ryan, one of the things that you talked about is your passion in communicating to young adults, and that's one of the things I really want to highlight. Is when people think of entrepreneurs, often they think of entrepreneurs who are only self-promotional, who often think about just their own bottom line and their own personal, wealth. And one thing that I'll say about you from the beginning is you've always been about the we. Do you promote and do you love to be in front of the camera and doing all these things? Yes. And it's always, to me, been for the benefit of others and seeking to understand others so that you can even let others benefit from what you've learned. So in your company, when you built your Aqualand, your dream, place that,
Yeah.
again, you've been one to really see your dreams fruition, you put a lot of benefits in there for your employees. I remember you built a relaxation room, you put a gym in there, you had a cold plunge in
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
you had things that would benefit their health. And it's always been about the team. And that's, to me, what one thing that's different about you in that way is even in your nonprofit about rainwater recovery, you did that to benefit remote areas that had risks for running out of water. You and your wife started those programs in Africa, and your wife ran those programs. The things that you do in your Aquascape lifestyle are bringing peace to people. So I really hope that people can see that everybody can win and everybody can succeed in that attitude when you have the we versus me approach. And if that's about abundance, it's not about scarcity. And even the way you went out there and started your company, you started from a place of, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do it. You didn't necessarily get caught up in the fear of what if this fails. You got into the idea of how can I make this work? And that's one thing I really want to highlight about, to me, what makes you different from a lot of people.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but I'll start with one of my favorite quotes, and I have a lot of quotes. The greatest satisfaction in life. That's a pretty big platitude. The greatest satisfaction in life comes from helping someone else reach their fullest potential.
Mhm.
So for many people, they're focused on themselves, but when you help other people get what they want, I think you get what you want. And so for my business, I always wanted to help people reach their fullest potential, whether that was the head janitor or the president of the company. When it comes to, my kids, you think about that, you just want them to far exceed what you ever were able to have success with. So having that kind of mindset that the greatest success is in helping someone else. It's also why I do my business, because helping people reconnect with nature the way, helping people reconnect with water the way nature intended it is kind of our byline. And I've just seen it impact so many people. So the reason that my catchphrase is I love my job is I focus on those things. Of course, every single day, all businesses is fixing problems. Every single day, I got problems to deal with, but I thank God for those blessings of those problems, because now it's an opportunity for me to overcome them get a sense of self-pride, and of course build something along the way, not just for myself, but for all the stakeholders that are not just our clients that have ponds like yourself, but the customers that work with us, that buy our products, and of course my number one thing, my teammates, that I could not be more proud of. And having guys like Ed the pond professor, who's been with me for
Mhm.
32 years along this journey, and Brian Helfrich, my head designer, that's been with me for 30 years. You know, those guys, they far exceeded any of my abilities and capabilities. And of
Mhm.
course, when I got out of their way and gave them a rope, they just climbed high and they pulled me up with them. And so this is kind of my philosophy always. And I've been able to build a team of 130 people that I'm extremely proud of. And it gives me and affords me the opportunity to live out where we want to live, in the mountains of Park City. And the business runs better when I'm not involved in it on a day to day and I'm thinking about the future. So I
Mhm.
constantly am working on the business and not in the business.
And you didn't build a business as much as you built a family. You really did, because I know even your president is, you have a great relationship with her, and she's come out to help support you and some, some when you've needed support with some other family issues and things. And Brian and Ed, they've been there forever. And I mean, Brian started when he was 17 or 18, didn't he start like really young? And
Yeah,
you've
Brian
just
graduated high school. He was working for 3 months at Boston Market, Boston Chicken at the time, which became Boston Market, and ended up hating being, behind a cash register and making chickens, and wanted to be outside. Had built a pond. I had actually met his dad because he had bought some products for his pond, and so his mom ended up dialing the phone number and handing it to him, and 30 years later, he's the top designer in literally the world for decorative water features. And Ed was got a degree in environmental science and was working in a lab with hazardous waste and hazardous water, doing tests, and couldn't stand also being inside. And now he's literally the best in the world when it comes to an engineering standpoint and ecology standpoint of water features. And then I just do what I do, which is to really promote and grow the industry and get more people interested in having decorative water features that can impact their lives.
absolutely.
And Greg, just to go back to something you mentioned about your outlook and trying to help others get what they want, and that sort of being one of your top priorities. That seems like a very enlightened outlook. And you mentioned your parents. I don't know, is that a value your parents instilled in you, or is that something a mentor, or maybe you just saw in somebody else,
Sure.
or is it totally organic from you?
Well, I can tell you that I had very supportive parents, both in my mom and my dad, very much in different ways. My mom is always, and to this day, is my number one fan. So there's no one like your mom, I would say. And my dad was a fellow hobbyist, so him and I, were always out there tinkering with the pond, and he started me out in aquariums when I was 5 years old and everything else. But probably the biggest person in that regard, in terms of helping other people, would be my high school football coach. And I talk to kids all the time, high school kids, college kids, and no one had told me the things that I have learned and the things that I've experienced. They never said you'll learn more about how to run a company by what you learn on the gridiron than the classroom. And I think that's just so wrong on so many levels. But I was a wayward 14-year-old incoming freshman that was in my fourth school in 4 years because of moving and because of schools opening and closing. Was a bigger kid, went out for the football team because of that. And from the first moment that I set eyes or heard Coach Rex walk into the small gym at Wheaton North High School and said, "Men, listen up," I realized I'm not going to get on this guy's bad side. And for 4 years, if my coach said jump, I would say how high. And this man taught me at a very impressionable age, 14, 15, 16 years old, basically what it meant to be part of something bigger than yourself. And subsequently, he was correct. He said, if you stick together, I'll make you champions. And sure enough, 3 years later, my junior year, we were the state champions, which as a high school athlete is the pinnacle of pinnacles. And I learned a very valuable lesson about building a culture. The number one job of a CEO is to guide and guard his company culture. And that man who did that for not just me, many other people, had incredible impact on so many lives. And I've kind of modeled kind of Aquascape in my business and my modus operandum off of what I learned from my high school football coach. And no teacher, no class I ever took had as much of an impact as a football coach and playing a sport.
It's amazing what a positive effect and lasting effect a high school sports coach can have on someone's life. It's really, and what a great tribute to him you just made there.
Well, and when he passed away in 2003, to this day, it was the biggest wake that I have ever attended. There was over 3,000 people that showed up, past players, cheerleaders, parents of people, sports suppliers. And it took me over 3 hours to say my condolences to the family standing in line. And that just shows when, you live a life to impact others, it comes back to impact you.
Absolutely. So one thing I did want to talk about too is that, probably one of the greatest challenges in your life was after you'd built your company and your company was really succeeding and growing. I know that, and we talked a lot about this at the time, was the issue that arose with your dad. And I remember you just not being able to understand what had happened and where that was going. But can you provide a little bit of background and kind of then go into that experience that you went through? And just to jump ahead, listeners and viewers, they have a great relationship now. Things have worked out. So, so why he's discussing this, I just wanted to give you that happy ending at the end, but wanted to Greg to share that.
Well, family, right? So my dad and I were fellow hobbyists. I launched the business. He was an engineer. And when the business took off in the end of the second season, he came in to help me out. And at the beginning of the third season, I incorporated my business, made him 50-50 partners because it was a passion of both of ours. And pretty much immediately, I would say black, and he would say white. He was very conservative, nothing wrong with that. He was an engineer. He was in his 50s. I was in my 20s. I was pretty wild and crazy. I'm not blameless here at all in any sense of the word. But we only worked together for basically 3 seasons before he became my first competitor, and I spent 9 years not talking to my own father. And we had a philosophical disagreement, and the disagreement was, he was very engineer focused. He was very focused on the products. I was very focused on the lifestyle. Once again, you need both. But it was a philosophical disagreement that he went off and tried to do it a different way. And I continued on my course with the lifestyle. And 9 years later, I ended up acquiring my dad's business, and he came back on board in a brief role, in a brief capacity, before he basically went out and launched his own pond construction business and became a customer. And yes, Dr. E, today we are fantastic. I would consider him probably one of my best texting buddies. We talk Ohio State football and photography and ponds, but we philosophically we're not aligned on the basis of the business. The paradigm and what I was focused on, and the shift was people were very focused on manufacturing filters to clean dirty water, and I wanted filters to build beautiful water features. And so today we don't have those issues because my strategy ended up becoming successful, but it was definitely the most trying experience of my life, I would say, with the fact that I didn't talk to my own father for 9 years. He missed the birth of both of my kids, missed my wedding, the birth of both of my kids, but it went full circle. And I'm married 27 years now. On my 25th anniversary, we went back to Hawaii where we got married, and had the whole family, including my dad, who was not there for the first time around. So it's what doesn't everything happens for a reason. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And he was a competitor and really lit the fires underneath me to be able to go out and show that what we were on the right approach, and it turned out to be okay. So I hold past sadness for those lost 9 years, but also that you always learn way more from life's valleys than you do life's mountaintops.
Mm-hmm. So emotionally, you're young, you're in your early 20s. Like you said, you and your dad had been buds and doing things together. You brought him in to work with you again to help build him up and have this relationship with your dad. And then you kind of felt like he was trying to undermine you and betray the confidence and tried to, I remember there were a lot of things that happened even after he started his own business that you felt were trying to actively undermine your own company. And how did you manage those emotions while you were grieving the loss of your parent in that.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Well, maybe a few holes in the drywall. You know, I'm a pretty emotional dude. I was a football player after all. But, you know, looking back at it now, something that I would not have been able to acknowledge back then, I certainly see my fingerprints on the knife. You know, I was not, you know, I was like, let's take the mountain. And my dad wanted the schematic. And of course, you know, you need both skill sets. And I didn't want to listen. And, you know, it's very probably true that if I was the crazy entrepreneur taking the mountain in my 50s and my dad was in his 20s, if the roles were reversed, it probably would have worked. But you know, when you're a 50-year-old conservative engineer and you got a dominant, go getting, you know, 20-year-old that has the sky is the limit type of attitude, you might want to be a little bit of a brake pedal to that. And I was not willing to have anything stop me from taking that mountain, and so didn't work out. But it did work out for Aquascape, and it did work out for the fact that it really fired me up to do when he said I couldn't do it that way. I said, I'm going to show you. So, but all's well that ends well. And the fact is, he is truly one of my, he just turned 80 years old. We celebrated together at the All American Koi Show in Las Vegas, Nevada 2 weeks ago. And, you know, we're all good today. So look at those lessons, look at those things that happen to you, those valleys, learn from those, because that's how you get to the mountains in the next one. And I tell you, I'm a better person because I went through that, and it gave me the confidence. It gave me the kick in the pants that really sent me to like, I'm going to do this. And then I did. So I look at those things as necessary evils in the journey to success.
Greg, that is a plot twist I really was not expecting on this podcast today. I'm curious about what happened when you acquired his company that he went out and started and tried to compete against you with. How did that come about? And was that sort of the thawing of the relationship that put you on the path back to, you know, patching things up?
Well, that was the thawing of the relationship. He was no longer a competitor. So it was a light switch. So I purchased the assets from the bank of his business. His business had run its course, and brought him back in the engineering side. He was very good at directions, instructions, very detail oriented man. And that only worked out for 2 or 3 years, and then he moved to Florida, retired down there to well, when I say retired, he basically started a little pond business, Pond Father Water Features, down in Titusville, Florida. And to this day, although he's starting to slow down at 80, he kind of builds and maintains ponds down there using the Aquascape products and methodology. So like I said, all's well that ends well.
Indeed.
I think a lesson that I want to bring to this situation is some people stay so stuck in their beliefs they don't move on. And while Greg, I know you have your stubborn bones in your body here and there, I love that what you were able to do over time was reflect on this. I loved it for you to even say that, you know I had my hands on the knife. You could have chosen to stay in that victim role. You know, I talk a lot about victims, persecutors, and rescuers. And you chose not to. You chose to really to come to more of an equity space to see, hey, we all share responsibility in this. And I think that's a sign of your evolution, your maturation, your growth. You're looking at life happening for you instead of to you, which you really brought attention to here too as well.
Well, and a lot of counseling, right? A lot of work on yourself. So I've always surrounded myself with coaches. I've always surrounded myself with more wise individuals. And then who would I be not to follow their advice? So yeah, that was certainly not always the case. But yeah, and also maturation, dude. I'm now basically at the same age my dad was when we separated. So I can look back at things a little bit differently, 30 years previous.
Well, congrats on that and on your company and what you've done with it. And I'd love to see your relationships. And I really see you as somebody who lives a life of truth, honor, and integrity. And those are the 3 words that I really try to encourage people to live by. I've loved seeing what you've done throughout your life, not only as a, in some ways I've always seen myself as a big brother in ways, while I see as a great friend. And I'm always proud of what you're doing and what you've done, not just in your business, but in your personal life and with your relationships.
Well, thank you. It's definitely always a journey. Life is a journey. If success, was easy. I mean, all business is fixing problems. If success came easy, but you learn. Don't run away from those problems. Lean in, because it's how you get better. And, just 2 days ago, I read a post from one of my sales guys talking about the challenges that he was having with a distributor, a customer of ours. And he said that they're basically just order takers. Everybody's there, lives for the weekends and the paychecks. And I was just sad. It made me sad. And it made me think about, you know, why anybody would enter doing anything not to their fullest abilities. Some people's abilities might take them to the president of the company, others would be the head janitor, but the goal is to always help someone reach their fullest potential. And that's the greatest satisfaction. So when I can look back and I can see where Ed Ballou is, where Brian Helfrich is, where Colleen Heitzler, the president, who started off as controller, moved up to chief financial officer, and then when everything hit, talk about another, major life milestone, 2008, in the economy, and almost losing what I created. But if you look back at that, and I look back at those experiences, and she came in and helped guide the company in a way that I could never have guided the company with my skill set. I'm appreciative of those, because the thing with my dad, shaped me, gave me motivation. The thing with the economy made me appreciate what I had when I almost lost it. And so I think it should be taught, it should be educated, that you learn more from life's valleys than you do mountaintops. And you look back at the things you're proud of. It's not the things that came easy, it's the things that came hard. And no one told me that. That's not what you learn in the classroom, but you learn that on the gridiron. You learn that after a defeat, how you come together as a team. I'm building a tribe today because, we're all supporting each other. So, these are things that life teaches you and you learn along the way. And it's not necessarily, some people for maybe, but done in a classroom. And I think it's a kind of a travesty that we don't teach our kids that. So thanks for the opportunity to be able to share, hopefully, some wisdom to some viewers out there about things that I've learned along my journey.
Really interesting point you just made there. You almost took the words out of my mouth. Wisdom. I really feel like you shared a lot of wisdom today with people, and it's great for you to be so open about the things you've gone through and what's led to your success. And so I appreciate you sharing that with Dr. E and myself and the listeners and viewers here.
And in that, I want
thank you guys. I
highlight
appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to highlight that comment of wisdom. I often talk about the way I see it. And I say wisdom is the application of knowledge gained through the qualitative interpretation of experience over time. So I say that again to remind the viewers and listeners. And I think, again, what we've talked about Greg really doing, he's done a qualitative interpretation of his own life experiences, which has brought him to a place of really having more qualitative knowledge and being able to apply that, being able to learn from others, learning from his own mistakes, learning how to succeed from those who have found success, as well as being willing to learn from those who have experienced those feelings of failure, or we might call failures. Remember, failure always tells us when it's time to learn, and stupid tells us when we experience multiple failures. So in that whole experience of bringing all this emotional algebra, I think you are more of a mathematician, Greg, than you realize in that. So at least at the emotional algebra equations, you've done quite well.
I'll take
all
that.
Right.
That's a positive spin on something. So I will take that. That's the first time I've ever heard math and pond guy in the same sentence as positive. So good job, Dr. E.
Hey, I'm always trying to put that spin on things, right? So but just spinning the truth. Well, I know you got to run, Greg, and you got a busy day and some skiing ahead of you. So enjoy the slopes on this last time skiing for the season. And I'll look forward to being in touch with you just about life, hopefully in the near future again, too.
And it was great meeting you, Greg. Thanks for sharing everything you did today. Well, Dr. E, that was an interesting conversation. Like I said, sort of at the beginning of this episode, I kind of didn't know where you were going with this topic and how he was going to play in, but wow, plot twists. What a tremendous wisdom from him. Really, really glad we had a chance to speak with him.
Yeah. And again, he's someone to me who I really want to highlight that idea of how so many people get pigeonholed in identifying their intelligence through more traditional ways, when intelligence is something that has so many different definitions as well as types of intelligences, and we can talk about culture bias and intelligent, as well as, to me, it's talent. It's a talent bias. So here in this discussion, we see somebody who obviously is gifted in his creativity, gifted in his understanding of nature, always looking to improve and learn and grow. The times that he and I spent together over the years where he just picked my brain and, why does this person to behave this way? Why does this person to behave this way? And I love the way that he's always asking questions, because to me, the most intelligent person in the room is the guy who doesn't want to be the smartest one in the room. And he recognizes his strengths, his challenges, his difficulties, and he's honest about it with himself as well as others. He'll say, hey, I'm not good at this. Can you give me a hand? Or can you point this out? Can you educate me? And he's brought in some great talent, and he's got his own gifts and talents. And, even as he'll tell you, his wife has been a great teacher to him. And he married somebody who's very strong. You can see he's pretty strong-willed. He married somebody just as strong with him, who he really credits. We didn't talk a lot about Carla, but she really was able to help him to step back and see things that he needed to see, sometimes with a, hey, snap out of it, look at reality, and sometimes just in a way just to encourage him. And that, to me, is a good team, is the way that they've helped each other throughout their life to really be their best people. And that's what I want. That's what I always want to encourage people to do, to find in their relationships and marriages, and obviously businesses and families and all these aspects of life. We want to make it about we versus me. And that's the concerns that I see in some of the issues we're facing culturally right now, is this idea of me at the expense of others rather than we at the benefit of all. And those are just observations that have been evolving for some time as we're moving, hopefully, from hierarchy, hopefully, to more equity-based system in the way we approach life and ourselves.
Yeah. And Greg seems to really have embraced the idea of not just making it about himself. Like, he's had tremendous success, and he could, just double down on that and not be as generous with it, or even not credit those around him that have helped him achieve the success. But that is not his ethos at all. He's really about sharing all the success with people and lifting others up too, which was great. I also want to mention, the guy does amazing work. Oh my God. Yeah. For anyone who's watching or listening, like I said before, click right over. He's Greg Wittstock, the pond guy, on YouTube. And I'm telling you, you might be thinking, ponds, what's so exciting about a pond? Wait till you see what he does with these things. It's quite amazing.
And, the thing people often think is, well, that's got to look mucky and dirty. And, I've had my pond for 25 years. And once I get the ecosystem going with all the natural bacteria and all the pieces, it's not a lot of effort. And my pond it's clear. I get to watch my fish in there, and I can see all the way, to the bottom, and all the different plants and all those things. So that to me is also about finding equity and balance with nature to create this self-sustaining ecosystem. And really, I think that's what I think I might have mentioned it before. That's what, to me, Greg has really been about, is about sustainability in nature, sustainability in relationships, sustainability in family, sustainability emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. And how do we continue to help things to be not just about now, but really looking to the future in creating a balance with ourselves, within ourselves. And that's really what we're trying to bring home through emotional algebra, is to find this emotional sustainability through finding the value and purpose of each emotion, and the value and purpose of all our interactions. And even as, he agrees with me that life happens for us, not to us.
Yeah. And it's great. I feel like he's a real world example, a living, breathing, real-time example of a lot of the things you talk about. So it's great to have him on and show what's possible.
Absolutely. Like I said, I have a great Rolodex of really good friends that I value who they are and how they've lived their life. And I think, we're drawn to each other for some of those reasons and the connections that I've made, as well as having you as part of this team.
All right. Well, thanks, Dr. E. That's a good episode. And
until next time.